Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. So I thought maybe you might have missed seeing Mr. Blake's bikes. So here we go. This is his new bike, by the way, so yeah, admire it. Today I have a glass of wine because I have done all my work for the day, which is kind of wild. I've actually done all of my work for the week. I must have drastically miscalculated, which I'm sure then I'll probably crash next week. But for now, let's just ride the high. Let's enjoy this Sauvignon Blanc. It's called Uppercut. So yeah. Okay, so hopefully you are enjoying Sweet Bitter. I, on my reread, have noticed a lot of things. I just finished, actually, and I did make a note of all of the wines and songs mentioned, so I will include those in the discussion post because they can be a little bit hard to keep track of while you're actually reading. So hopefully that's something you find helpful. I have actually never had any of the wines that are mentioned in the book. I imagine they might be a touch spendy, but I will find out and let you know. Okay, I'm not holding my glass correctly. Please don't judge me, I don't have time. I did forget to say that if you have not listened to Manic, the album by Halsey, you really should. It's a little more mellow than it sounds like it's going to be. It's certainly more mellow than any of my manic periods have ever been, so there's that. But definitely listen to it all the way through. It is designed, I think, to be very cohesive, and there's 3 songs right in the middle that basically sound like one song that are just excellent. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, they're kind of similar, but I'm going to address them one at a time. So first, I don't know if you've addressed this before or if it even works for a video. It does. But one of my favorite passages from all your work is, actually their favorite passage is in Survival Techniques, when Pansy introduced Percy to Daphne and instinctively spiraled for a minute before jolting back. So there's a moment in that story where Pansy is a little self-conscious about introducing Daphne to her love interest because Daphne is very beautiful and charismatic, and it's just a whole thing where Pansy feels a little bit insecure. And then she's reassured by the fact that the guy that she's with seems to really only feel comfortable with her. I relate to Pansy the most always, usually because of stuff like this. For the Pansies of the world who have Daphnes but not Percys, do you have any words for us on how not to feel threatened all the time in our best and favorite female relationships? This is such an interesting question because I think this is definitely very real. So the way that I'm interpreting this, and hopefully I'm correct, is that this person relates to Pansy in the sense that there are feelings of insecurity, especially when you have a very close friend or a best friend who is, either very beautiful or very whatever. They make you feel slightly more inadequate. So I did read at some point that people who have trouble with jealousy or feeling inadequate compared to other people were compared to other people as children. So maybe you have a sibling or someone in your life that your parents repeatedly compared you to, or maybe they compared you to them. It doesn't matter, but the point is that because that was something that happened in your childhood, you may have a more difficult time self-soothing. So when you compare yourself to other people, you kind of forget your own value. A couple of pop culture things that just popped into my head. I don't know if you've ever seen Schitt's Creek, but I recently binged everything up till the current season, which I can't watch yet. So it's David and Alexis that are brother and sister. And David's very anxious and very perfectionist type A. And he's very nervous about his driving test. So Alexis, who's very carefree, is like, David, nobody thinks about you the way that you think about you. And what she was trying to say is, basically, calm down. Nobody's as concerned with what's going on in your head as you are. Or no one is thinking the same things that you are. So in the situations where you're with your friend and you're thinking about everything that is wrong with you, or that they're doing better, or that they have that you don't, no one else is thinking about that. I almost guarantee, especially, that your friend is not thinking about that at all. Ideally, they are not comparing themselves to you. Although I strongly believe that if they would definitely come up with something you have that they don't. Everybody can. So that's just the reality of the situation. The stuff that you're feeling anxious about, it is an anxiety where it is all internal. So the way that you would have to deal with that is, like I said, learning how to self-soothe. When I was in high school, My friend my friend had two parents who were both psychologists, and we watched a really scary movie one night, and I hate horror, and I couldn't sleep that night. And my friend goes, okay, well, this is what my parents say to do. When you feel afraid, just list things that you know about yourself, from the most concrete to whatever follows from there. So say your name, the day you were born. We're basically, so in order to soothe yourself from fear, one thing you do is just secure yourself in your own identity. So I'm actually going to apply that here. Also, you said that this is for someone who has a Daphne and not a Percy. And the thing is that I wrote this into a romance, so I wasn't really that concerned with Pansy's personal growth. But having someone in a relationship tell you that you're great is not going to actually make you feel great. That's just kind of the harsh truth of it, is you would think that like, oh, having someone's love is going to make it so that you never doubt yourself again. But that's not true. If you can't soothe yourself, no one will ever soothe you. So this is something to still learn, whether you have someone who loves you the way that Pansy's love interest does or not. So one thing to do is to remind yourself of who you are. Progress to what makes you valuable. So the things that you know you're good at, the things that you would come to you for. Your friend obviously comes to you for something. Your friend finds value in your relationship. And where do you think that she finds it? Finding your own value and being comfortable in who you are and what you bring to the table is such a long process. I think that I also didn't have a very clear idea of who I was until like my mid-20s. Even though I could have made that list of here's all the reasons I think I might be valuable, I didn't really believe them until later in life. So it's okay if you have to play this silly little game with yourself where you literally list off to yourself why you're valuable. If you need to do that, that's fine. Just treat it like a little security blanket. But it's better that you learn to do that, because you can damage a lot of relationships by not loving yourself, by not being able to deal with your own feelings of inadequacy. You may find that friendships fall apart or relationships are too much work. It's too much emotional labor for the other person if they have to constantly build you up. So learning how to build yourself up is really worth learning how to do now, which transitions very well into the next question. This was sent to me on Christmas, so it is a Christmas rambling. When all the family gets together, I always realize that I'm holding my breath, afraid of being myself. I always felt the need to prove that I'm enough and that I'm a good daughter to my father and my oldest brother. He's 35 and I'm 21. I'm going to guess there was a lot of comparison here, probably a lot of comparing you to your brother. And it seems that even if I did the right thing, it would never be enough to make them proud. My father was always the type where if I had a good grade in school, he asked why I wasn't the best in the class. I'm doing my master's in a field that they don't approve of at all, and even now my results are never good enough. One thing that bothered me a lot this Christmas was that my mom was saying she was grateful for me helping her with the sweets and food, and of course my father said, just wait until she moves out. Anyways, I was wondering if you had any advice on how to deal with family in general and how to care less about what the people you love think of you. So this is really a lot of the same thing as what I said before, but it's slightly different because you're looking for validation from people who naturally you would seek validation from. The reason I talk so much about what we're missing from childhood is because it really does inform what we seek out for the rest of our lives. Your love language is basically whatever you didn't get as a child, which makes sense because relationships are kind of us seeking out the little like fixes to all the flaws in us. We want someone who brings out the best in us and who also kind of re-secures the foundation where things might be missing. It's kind of why we go out and we build our own families. Which is really just to say that I think that what happens when your family doesn't approve of you or you're seeking validation from them and they don't give it to you, you often turn into like a child version of yourself. You feel like a little kid. And a lot of times that can be really frustrating because you want to be secure in the knowledge like, hey, I've done all this stuff, I'm getting my master's, I'm doing great, I'm doing well in school. And you want to be an adult about it. You want to say like, I know these things about myself and I don't need your approval. But then you get into the situation and that little kid version of you comes out and you want your dad and your brother to tell you that you're doing a good job. You can do the things that I said to answer the last question of kind of rebuilding yourself by stopping for a moment and saying, nope, I'm valuable because of these reasons. This is who I am. This is what I bring to the table. This is what I'm still learning. This is the kind of person I want to be. Knowing all of those things can maybe help you in the moment. But I think because you turn into such a little like baby version of yourself, I like to describe it as my inner self is just like this little cotton ball with googly eyes that just like anything could hurt me. When you get to that point, it's really hard to build up that armor of I don't care what you think. So I think really what you have to do is just kind of go into it knowing that feeling bad in the moment doesn't detract from who you are. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less. It may not be something that you can build back up. The thing is that these are people who are supposed to build the baseline, the foundation of who you are and what you are. So you're always going to be a little bit unstable if there's cracks in that foundation. This might be one of those situations where it just hurts and it just is bad for your mental health, and what you have to really think about is how to heal yourself after. And I think what that is just forgiving yourself for letting them make you feel bad, which feels like a silly thing to say because it's, it's such a roundabout way to deal with a wound, an open wound, a wound that reopens up every time you see your family. But short of not spending as much time with them, which I don't know if you can do because it sounds like you still live at home, you just have to, it's an ache, it's a wound. So treat it appropriately. In order to heal it, it means a lot of kind of going a little bit easier on yourself, giving yourself a little bit of rest. I'm not actually a doctor, so I can't give you any real advice about healing real wounds. But emotional wounds, you just have to let yourself heal. And part of that is just forgiving yourself and reminding yourself that you're doing great. And I know that that's hard, and I think we all have that problem. I actually have a problem where there is a family member in my life who I feel very let down by from my childhood. And so I have a tendency to be my worst self when I'm around them. I want to be mature. I want to be, ambivalent. I'd love to be like blasé about it and just not care. But the truth is that you do care because it's fundamental to who you are. And so really the best thing I can do is just kind of let myself off the hook and say, okay, that was really hard. That was really hard. And, and maybe it seems like it shouldn't be hard, but it is. And that's the truth. And that's the world. And so let's just take a break. Let's just rest and let's do something to recharge. And I know that's very vague advice, but I hope that and my answer to the last question helps a little bit. This is really the matter of self-soothing is like, it's crucial. And I think that it's something that most of us learn later in life because you can't, if you have the perfect environment, then you learn it as a child, or you learn it as a survival technique. But sometimes those techniques kick in later. And so now is the time to teach ourselves how to be kind to ourselves when we're hurt or when we're struggling. Because the more secure you are in who you are, the less other people will be able to hurt you, or the less, really what it is the less you'll be reliant on what other people think about you, whether that's your family or your friends. Everybody is a collection of strengths and weaknesses. That applies to you as well. So understanding that you are who you are with your many strengths and some your flaws, some your weaknesses, you have value. And you can sort of remind yourself what that value is. That's the self-soothing process. And the more secure you are in who you are, the less other people will be able to hurt you. Okay, so hi Olivie, any advice on how to fight better with your partner during discussions? Yes! So, I talk all the time about love languages and I mentioned it already. It's just like knowing your partner's actual language. If you say something that's not in their language, they don't understand you. And that's the thing. I actually just saw an article that says like how to deal with a partner who never says I love you. And the thing is that people say I love you in very different ways. I have always said that Mr. Blake's love language is deeds. So even I could say I love you a million times a day. I could be affectionate, physically affectionate with him as much as I wanted. But he knows he's loved when I do things like pack his lunch for him, which is literally a 5-second task, but for some reason he becomes overwhelmed with emotion because he's like, this is what love is. Love is one person doing something for another person. And everybody has their thing like that. So first of all, you want to know the way that your partner speaks love, and also knowing the way that they speak love is also a great way to know how they don't speak it, how not to show love. Like gifts, for example. I don't put a lot of value in material things. I think if there's something that I want, then I can buy it for myself, and I don't really want someone else to buy it for me. Like if I had a partner who their way of showing love was to give me material objects to provide for me in a financial way, that wouldn't translate to me as love. So that's just one thing to understand before we move forward. So you have to know how you fight. And I think that sometimes this is a practice issue. Mr. Blake and I don't fight very often, which means that when we do fight, all of our our worst personality flaws come out. A few years ago when we would fight, it would be a really long process because it would get really mean really fast. I get very cold when I'm angry, so I say hurtful things and I don't flinch. It's very retaliatory. That's a lot of lashing out. And his thing is he can't process his emotions very quickly. So his thing would be to try to escape the situation, which would always make things so much worse for me because it made me feel like it wasn't worth him staying here to stick it out. I have abandonment issues, so him leaving a fight was like the worst thing he could ever do to me. And the fallout from that would last for days. So that's an example of fighting badly. The caveat here is I am very quick to anger, but also very quick to diffuse, versus Mr. Blake is very slow to his emotions. He is, like many men, less informed of his own emotions, so he can feel irritated by something without identifying what's bothering him for a long time. He needs a lot of time to process what he's feeling. Versus I know right away what's upsetting me, and I could probably put it into words, but I can't always put it into words that he would understand. And more importantly, even if I could tell him what was wrong, he doesn't necessarily know what to do about it. His best friend and I are currently in the midst of sort of a difficult disagreement. I think that his friend got involved in something that he shouldn't have and that it was disrespectful to me, and the friend is, we're not speaking. And this was very hard for Mr. Blake, but it was also hard for me because I felt like he wasn't defending me. And he was like, what do you want me to do? This is my best friend. And I was like, yes, but, and then I realized I wanted something kind of irrational. I wanted him to take my side, but what taking my side looked like meant him losing his friend. So I had to kind of stop and think about, what do I really want from this situation? What is the outcome that I'm okay with? Because I don't want to cut him off from his friends. I really don't. That's not what I want. I don't want to cause him any pain. And I don't want to make things more difficult for him. So what did I really want? What I really wanted was for him to understand the pain that I was in, the way that I felt betrayed. So when you kind of change the scope of what you want to come out of the situation, that can really be helpful. Because when I went into the conversation, I was like, okay, this is what I want. I want you to really understand how and to what extent this hurt me. So what that means for me is you listening to me for maybe a long time while I say everything that I'm thinking, and everything that I feel that he did to me, and why I can't forgive him. And once I got what I wanted, which was him understanding where I was coming from, I did really feel much better. And it's funny because you would think that the only thing that would have made me feel better was full-scale war. at some moments it does feel like that is what I want. I kind of have to understand the fact that I married a kind man. I married a man who is very willing to forgive people. As much as I want him to leap to my defense, I also know that that's not who he is. I'm the white knight in our relationship. He's the princess. If that's that's like definitely a weird thing to say, but I'm the one who's like, there is going to be bloodshed if anyone hurts him. And kind of really understanding that all I wanted was to know that he was on my side, and he gave that to me, and that kind of diffused my anger. So first of all, deciding what you want, what your ideal outcome is, because once I thought about it, I didn't want him to be someone he wasn't. I didn't want him to have to start this war and maybe resent me over the fact that I made him choose sides. All I wanted was to feel like I wasn't alone. And he gave that to me. And so that's why it didn't become a fight. It just was sort of a little bit of tension that eventually resolved. And that was a huge thing for us. It was really the first time where I felt like this was almost a fight, and we got through it without fighting. And really it ended up being an hour of me like just sobbing and him saying, I know he hurt you, and I've said that to him, and stuff that I didn't necessarily know. We can't always know what's going through our partner's heads, especially if they're not good at voicing it, and Mr. Blake is not. So me talking, then giving him the opportunity to think about what he wanted to say back, because he needs time to think about it, and then say it back, it's turned into a very fruitful thing for us. I've learned now that when I want to bring up something emotional with him, I have to sort of plant it first. I say, at some point I'd like to have a conversation about this thing. And then I give him a few days to think about it. And usually he'll come to me, he takes like a solid 24 to 36 hours to like think about it. And then usually he'll like text me from work and say like, okay, I'm ready to talk about it now. Let's talk about it when I get home. So we've kind of come around to this idea that we function on two different timelines. I'm like pretty well equipped to talk about things immediately, but he isn't. And so understanding that has helped us a lot. I don't know if timelines are your thing with your partner, but that's definitely something to consider, that everybody sort of processes things at different times. And if you can figure out their rhythm and you know your own rhythm, you find a way to coexist. You definitely want to avoid being mean. I mean, that's the thing you want to avoid at all costs, is hurting your partner, because a lot of times you can't come back from that. There's a lot of things that you could say that really damage the person you're with in a way that they might not get over. That was definitely true of Mr. Blake's past relationships. It's true of my past relationships, where even if you could get past that one fight, that thing they said, it sticks in your psyche. And you don't want to be that. You don't want to do that to your partner. So if you can change the pace, that's one thing. And then also think about what you actually want out of it and what would actually satisfy you. Because a lot of times the fight's not going to satisfy you, especially if it doesn't come to what I used to call a productive conclusion. So always say, this fight is not productive. We haven't produced anything. But fights rarely do. So coming to what you think that productive conclusion would be first can actually help you to avoid the fight. I was hoping to get through more, but I didn't, so we'll try again next week. Reminder that the Atlas 6 is available for pre-order. The thing with Amazon is that you can't do a pre-order for the paperbacks because you have to submit the whole like perfected manuscript, which if I had the whole perfected manuscript, then I wouldn't do a pre-order. So the ebook is available for pre-order. Please subscribe to my website if you'd like to be notified, or to this. If you'd like to be notified when the paperback comes out, which is January 31st, my birthday. I know Taylor Swift has like a documentary coming out, but like, don't forget me, okay? Anyway, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.